Welcome into today's edition, Wednesday, of Helping Seniors of Brevard. I'm John Harper. Let's get the show underway as we introduce the host of the show, the Executive Director of Helping Seniors of Brevard. Here's Kerry Fink. Hi, Kerry.
Hi, John Harper, and thank you. And on behalf of our president and founder, Joe Steckler, our education specialist, Kim Bernard, welcome to Lunch Hour on Wednesday. It's the regular gathering around the radio, and I guess particularly since there's a few raindrops around, we'll just gather inside. And we have some really important things to talk about today because as you know, this COVID virus, we're all standing in the radio station. We all had all of our shots and stuff like that, but as we keep hearing, there's a lot of stuff going on out there with people, especially those apparently who have not been vaccinated, that are seeming to have a lot of trouble with this Delta variant. And so obviously rule number one, I guess, in all of this is if you can, you should get vaccinated. And I was just teasing with our guest who is, we have actually a very important topic to cover today because I was asking him earlier this week, I said, what do you think we would cover this week? And he said, well, with the virus trying to make its comeback, it might be a really good thing to talk about advance directives and things like that, because these are things we don't normally think about. But everybody's attention is on this COVID variant and things like that. In fact, they're telling us now, CDC guidance is saying we're supposed to wear masks indoors, even if we're vaccinated. And I was saying to Bill Johnson, elder law attorney, board certified elder law attorney, who is in the studio with us this week. I was literally, just before the broadcast goes on, I see an email from Frontier Airlines, who's now saying friends with vaccines fly free. And it's a fly with a friend who's had a vaccination, and you actually get bonus miles. So I guess everybody is trying to encourage you to get the vaccine. And Bill, last week on the Helping Seniors Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram and all the places on social media that we were sharing reports from the Brevard Emergency Management Office, where they were really asking our help in getting the word out, because they're concerned that at that time, I haven't checked it this week, but at that time they were getting over 1 in 5 cases where they were testing them coming back as positive, and that was way over the guidelines, because just, I guess, four weeks before it was like 5% or something.
Correct. And the positivity rate is skyrocketed, and subsequently we have now tents outside most of our hospitals.
Yeah, so it really becomes an important thing. So I know if there's a lot of people out there who have different feelings, or some maybe have really legitimate reasons for not wanting to take the vaccine. But what I keep gathering is that if you're vaccinated, you might get this variant, but it's not really going to do much harm to you. But if you're unvaccinated, this is what is actually causing people to need to be in hospitals and ventilators and all that stuff we remember not fondly from last year.
Correct. And that's the big difference. It doesn't prevent you from getting COVID, but the symptoms you'll experience are a lot less, and probably less life-threatening than if you do not have the vaccine.
But it does set an interesting backdrop for us to have this conversation about, right? Because there are always these things that we put off, and one day we're going to get to it. It's like, I'm going to fix this.
I was just about to take the words right out of your mouth. I'm running an ad right now. It says, if you were putting off your planning for the big event, well, the big event's here.
Yeah. It really feels that way, because, we always have this list of things that I'm going to work. I don't know about you, but I keep a little to-do list, and usually I try to put it in the priority, like, well, this is a deadline, this has to get done, and then there's stuff that you need to get done, and it's someplace down toward the bottom of the list. But boy, I sure agree with you, because this advanced planning, this whole discussion about advanced planning, you think, well, when I'm old, and I want to have my wishes known, but apparently with this COVID stuff, it can hit you at any time.
Correct. And we did several radio shows where we talked about how difficult it is for us as attorneys to get into people who are in nursing homes, assisted livings, or the hospital to get documents done. So don't assume you can catch COVID and then do your documents, because all these facilities are on lockdown again.
Yeah, I think it's actually a little bit heartbreaking when you hear the story about people who are like in intensive care saying, I wish I'd taken the vaccine, and I guess the corollary to that is I wish I had all my paperwork straightened out.
Correct. We're again getting, these calls of people wanting to do their wills or powers of attorney or healthcare surrogates, now that they have been tested positive, and quite frankly, we can't get to them. We can't get the paperwork to them to sign.
Yeah, and I remember you and I talked a lot last year as we were kind of in what I call the thick of it. It was supposed to be 30 days to stop the spread, and it seems like it just goes on. But I remember you explaining how you guys really had to shift gears and try. I remember you were talking about having a drive-through where people could come in and they wouldn't have to get out of the car, but you had a system for being able to get paperwork done. But then it seemed really problematic, even after they changed the rules that, some paperwork could be done digitally, but because seniors are in fact a vulnerable population, that whole thing excluded them, which is the bulk of the people who probably need the help with this at this time the most.
I agree with you. That is exactly what we're talking about. And if there is a silver lining to this, is that 80% or something, probably I think it's over 80% of people over 60 did get vaccinated.
Yeah.
So the most at risk, most of them have been vaccinated. But I think the vast majority of the people going to the hospital now are between 30 and 50 or something like that.
Yeah, it's really incredible. So it seems like we had this conversation even a few months back when they were first saying like, okay, if you had your vaccine, you can relax a little bit because you're going to be in better shape. But I remember we were even talking on the radio at that time, about being careful about letting down your guard because you never know if another variant's going to come along. And I think that really sets the backdrop for us to talk about this. And Joe Steckler, you've known Joe longer than I have because you guys go way, way, way back into Brevard Alzheimer's days, Joe's clubs and all that. But Helping Seniors itself has been around now. This is our 10th year of serving the community. And I know ever since I've known Joe, he's always pounding a drumbeat about this thing he calls an aging plan. He said, you've got to make a plan so that you are prepared. Just like here in Florida, they tell us make a hurricane plan. You hope the hurricane doesn't come here. You pray it turns out to sea and doesn't mess with anybody else or whatever. But the fact is you still want to have the batteries, the drinking water, the plans, everything that you want to do in case it does come near you. And so that's why I thought really what you were talking about makes so much sense. If we talk about how do you plan ahead for this kind of stuff? I know Advance Directives is the key word, but to those of us who are not attorneys and don't really understand much of this, even that's a kind of a technical term.
I agree with you how you plan ahead. I mean, there are a lot of different ways that you can plan ahead. They recommend, most financial advisors recommend you have 3 months of savings,
right?
That being money set aside to cover 3 months of your bills. Given what's happened with COVID over the last year and a half, that may not be enough, but you definitely should have money set aside for the rainy day. You also should have insurance. You need to cover yourself in the event of having some sort of catastrophic event, whether it be a hurricane, a healthcare event, a death, an accident. All those things you can insure against the risks that come with that. And of course, what I deal with is the legal end of things, having decision makers put in place and having your wishes honored in the event you become incapacitated.
And I guess that really runs the question. I know a couple of things that we were looking at before we started on the radio was, we were talking about this idea of prepare for your own financial future, hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And some of the research that you've done on this was talking about, it's really important that you get ahead of this curve, everything from getting together with your financial professionals so they know who trusted contacts are and things like that. Where do you sit down when somebody comes in your office and says, okay, Bill, I heard you guys talking about this on the radio. It's time for me to get my house in order. Where do you start with them on this whole thing?
Well, I usually start with the incapacity documents, the durable power of attorney, the designation of healthcare surrogate, the living will, and if there's some family conflict, a pre-need guardian declaration. There are other things you can do. I think you touched on some of those. Your broker should be telling you that you can designate a trusted contact. That is someone the broker has authority to reach out and contact if they cannot get a hold of you, so that they can find out what's going on with you and are able to communicate. You also can go down to the Social Security Administration and set up a advance designated payee, so that if you become incapacitated, there's somebody who is already set up to deal with the Social Security Administration. So, and most brokerage firms too have, and banks have an internal durable power of attorney that you could execute, allowing somebody to manage your accounts in the event you become incapacitated.
Well, let's back up a notch if it's okay, because when you said that person comes in your office and sits down, I think you listed off 5 different, if I got the number right, it was like 5 different documents, and you said the first was like, what was the first one?
The durable power of attorney.
Okay, so let's pretend that I've never heard this term before. I don't know what it means, but why do I need one?
Okay, so if you're incapacitated, say you've caught COVID and you're in the hospital on a ventilator, well, certainly your bills don't stop coming in.
No.
And if you're lucky enough to survive that and may have to go to a nursing home for rehab, there has to be somebody to sign the admission agreement.
Wow.
So you need somebody that you can designate as your agent to manage your financial affairs. And usually it's a very broad grant of authority, kind of, manage my checking, savings, bank accounts, manage my securities accounts, manage life insurance, sign tax returns, sell real estate, manage my business, a whole list. So in Florida, unlike a lot of states, you specifically have to give somebody a power. And if you don't specifically give them that power, they don't have it. So some states have like one-page power of attorneys. In Florida, typically you'll see, 13, 14 pages, maybe even longer on some of them. That's because it is filled with boilerplate. Because we're trying to give as many powers, any power we can think of that somebody might need to manage your affairs, we're trying to give that to that person. Now in Florida, these are effective immediately when signed. So once you sign one of these, the person named in the document could run out and start getting their hands into everything you own. So it's important that you don't hand this out to anyone until they need to have it. And I always advise my clients, put it in a safe place, fireproof safe deposit box. Make sure your agent knows how to get into that.
Yeah.
And then if something happens to you, they can go in, get the document, and more than likely divert your mail, start paying your bills, and managing your affairs. Don't assume, like a lot of people do, just because you're married to somebody that you have this authority. You do not. So say I am laid up and I'm incapacitated, I got dementia, and my wife wants to get into my 401k to pay my caregiving bills. Well, unless I've given her power of attorney, she can't do that.
And that's where it always brings you back to the only other resort is ridiculously or can be ridiculously expensive compared to just doing this the right way ahead of time, because then you're stuck into guardianship.
Correct. And a bare bones guardianship in Brevard County is about $10,000.
And when you're talking about putting together,
And that's
properly.
uncontested. So if you haven't designated anybody and then multiple people come out of the woodwork
Wow.
wanting to be in charge of you, then we're going to end up in a trial. And, some of these trials now are going, 3, 4, 5 days. You can imagine what the attorney fees are. And then sometimes it doesn't end there. Everybody's not happy with who gets appointed, and then they continually want to keep fighting even after the trial.
Amazing.
So, yeah, you can run into hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. Not that a power of attorney will stop all that, because, what if the person you named in the power of attorney to manage your financial affairs turns out to be a thief?
Ooh.
And, yeah, as you know, Kerry, 60%, according to the National Council on Aging, 60% of all exploitation of seniors is done by a spouse or the adult children.
Wow. Wow.
So the number one exploiter of seniors is family.
Yeah, we're talking with Bill Johnson, board certified elder law attorney, and we're really just talking about how important it is that you get this paperwork done. Particularly, what COVID should teach us that, if nothing else, we should get an understanding about why this is important. And Bill, the other thing that I keep reading about the trends of people moving to Florida. Somebody told me, I think this is probably about accurate, but 900 families a day moving into Florida. Not specifically here, but we're growing that fast.
We've had a great influx from the Northeast lately.
Right.
The people are maybe not permanently moving, maybe getting summer homes or planning to come, but the idea of living in a city where there's a virus is less than appealing to a lot of people.
Right.
And they are coming to Florida, and as I said, everybody here knows we've got a few urban centers, but we're fairly spread out still,
Relatively speaking.
Yeah,
somebody
compared
who used to
to-
live in New York City. Yeah, right. So, but when you think about that, so people move into the state, they come with maybe, hopefully, documents that they had put together by somebody competent up north, or they're snowbirds and they're just down here for some of the time. But you've explained to me and impressed upon me that it's really important that you get somebody who understands Florida's rules and regulations, take a look at all that.
That's a great point, Kerry, because even though we have on the books statutes that say we will recognize an out-of-state power of attorney, will, trust, healthcare surrogate, living will, if they're validly executed in the state of origin, the problem, and particularly with a durable power of attorney, comes down to an interpretation issue.
Wow.
Because the way Florida interprets power of attorneys, that you specifically have to give somebody a power, can make a lot of out-of-state documents useless in Florida.
This really feels like it puts you in a pressure cooker right at the time you don't need to be in a pressure cooker, because all of a sudden your loved one is sitting in a hospital and now stuff needs to move in some way, and you got paperwork, and now you're trying to sort out, or like we've had the conversation before, somebody rolls up with some self-made document, they got it off the internet or went down to a supply store or something like that, and it's not going to help you when it needs to be put to the test.
I would guess 50% or so of documents people have done online that I get in my office are void.
It's kind of scary because you all see these commercials. Oh, you can be a lawyer. You can do your own estate plan. And it seems like that's a fool's errand.
I get bad documents that don't do what they're supposed to do. I get documents where people just assumed where it says witnesses, you don't have to have them.
Oh, my goodness.
So they come in with these documents where they've signed them, but there's no witnesses. And then I get people who come in, like for a will, you have to sign in the presence of two witnesses, and the witnesses have to sign in the presence of the testator.
Wow.
And then I look down at these homemade documents, and the testator signed one day, another witness signed 2 days later, and none of them saw each other sign, and so basically, the whole thing's invalid.
Wow. When we were kids, you remember when we were in a classroom and they would hold a fire drill, right? Because the idea was, okay, kids, get out of your desk, march down to the playground, line up, the teacher's going to call roll. And it was this whole procedure that you were doing this. So before there was an emergency, you had checked everything out. And I would say this is kind of the equivalent, somebody giving you or just having somebody really understands Florida law, and as we talked about, specifically elder law in Florida, to go through these documents is so important, because otherwise you don't really get a fire drill. You're just like in the fire.
Correct. If you don't have the documents, I would say 50% of what I do is emergency
firefighting.
Yeah, the incidents happen. Somebody's had a stroke, somebody's in a nursing home, somebody's in the hospital. That's where we're ending up doing guardianships, Medicaid planning, trying to figure out how we're going to pay for the long-term care, how we're going to try and get these documents signed, crisis intervention. Yeah. And then the other half is people who take the time and actually pre-plan.
Yeah. So we're going to continue this conversation with Bill Johnson, elder law attorney. Before we go to mid-show break, though, want to make sure people have a phone number to get a hold of your office. I know you have a great website. It's floridaelderlaw.net. But how do people call your office and say, hey, I hear what you guys are talking about. I need to figure this out?
They can reach us at 321-253-1667.
Okay, we're going to continue this conversation about pre-planning on the other side of the break, and we have some updates about Helping Seniors car raffle to give you too. So stick around on Helping Seniors Radio.
You're listening to Helping Seniors of Brevard. As we get back to the show, let's reintroduce our host, the Executive Director of Helping Seniors of Brevard, Kerry Fink. Kerry?
Hey, thank you, John Harper, and welcome back to the second part of the Helping Seniors Wednesday lunch hour. The attorney is in, board-certified elder law attorney Bill Johnson, who's been a friend of Helping Seniors going back with Joe Steckler well before there was a Helping Seniors, and really has been kind of a real go-to guy as we try to explore all the facets of the things you need to know when putting together your aging plan. And so today, particularly with the resurgence of COVID and everything, the need for getting your paperwork in order is not, sometime in the hazy future. It could be tomorrow with that next COVID test. So we spent a good part of the first part of this show talking a little bit about power of attorney and why all that is important. So I kind of want to pick up where we left off, Bill. I want to first start with saying, as we go through this, number one, we make everything that we do on media, whether it be our TV shows that broadcast 3 times a week on Space Coast Government TV, whether it be our weekly radio shows, a lot of the things that we do with Facebook, we call them Helping Seniors Updates and things like that. All of that stuff we archive both on our YouTube page, our Facebook page, and we make sure it's also on our helpingseniorsofbrevard.org page. But you, Bill Johnson, are always giving seminars and talks and getting education in the community. You volunteer your lunch hour on Wednesdays, first week of the month, to come in and help us really get an understanding of what we're supposed to be doing. But if people want to get in touch with your office, how do they do that?
They can reach us at 321-253-1667.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about power of attorney. And again, if you missed that first part of the show, no worries, because we will post this back out even before the end of this week, so you'll be able to access it. And part of the reason we do that, by the way, is not only in case you missed a point that would be important, but maybe as you're hearing it, it makes you think of somebody who could really benefit from this information, and you can just point them over to that to that YouTube link or that Facebook link and say, this could help you in this situation. But we were talking about, sorry?
I was going to add one thing. I haven't told you this yet, but we're going to link on my webpage to your YouTube channel.
Yay! Thank you, Bill.
So that people can go to our thing, and then if they're looking for some sort of talk on a subject, they can just go right to the YouTube channel.
And that's the point. What's interesting is you've done shows with Joe since we started this whole thing, and you've done them about Medicaid planning. I can think of specifically, there's a two-parter that is so relevant. We still broadcast it usually once a month on Space Coast Government TV, because the point is everybody's turning 65, and somebody has a birthday today, and all of a sudden they're dealing with all these things that they never thought they should. And that's why this is so big about getting ahead. But we started the topic like somebody comes into the office. I think you listed off like 5 different things that you would start to talk to them about. One was power of attorney, but the second was healthcare surrogate. But remember, I just walked in off the street. I don't even know. That sounds like a big medical term. What does that mean, Bill?
So generally in Florida, we use a durable power of attorney for financial. It's not that you can't use it for medical. You could have a durable power of attorney for healthcare decisions, but generally the preferred document is something called a designation of healthcare surrogate.
Okay.
And what that allows is that somebody can make your healthcare decisions if you're incapacitated. Either once a doctor denotes in your medical file that you lack the ability to give informed consent, or you can check another box and make it effective immediately. And you would check that box if you were severely ill and you needed somebody to jump right in. The healthcare surrogate would then do what you wished if they knew what that was. That's called substituted judgment. If they know what your wishes are, they got to follow it. And if they don't, they got to act in your best interest. But they would make healthcare decisions, whether or not you get an operation, if you go to assisted living, nursing home, if you need to change doctors or what doctors you see, any kind of healthcare decision that needs to be made, that person can do it. Hand in hand with that is really the another document we were talking about, a living will. And that is really where you spell out what your wishes are in the event you're incapacitated and hooked up to life-prolonging devices. That could be a ventilator, could be a feeding tube. And whether or not you want life support continued, if it is only prolonging the dying process. And usually you indicate whether or not that's the case if you are in a terminal condition, an end-stage condition, or a persistent vegetative state. And subsequently, then your wishes are known with regard to that, and you don't have to kind of put those off on your family.
So let's break this down. Bill Johnson, who is a board certified elder law attorney and our guest this week on Helping Seniors Radio. And we often think about, that could be something that happens 20 years from now or something. But what we have learned with COVID is it could be tomorrow. The person, seems like one of the challenges with COVID is you get diagnosed with COVID and you could find yourself literally on a ventilator fighting for your life, if you're not vaccinated. And that's one of the reasons why, I was thinking about this even a couple of weeks ago. Joe called in, he literally called in the middle of the radio show because he was like wanting to make sure that people understood that this whole wave was coming with this, just what we're talking about today about how the hospitals are filling up, and that he was concerned because Florida at that moment had one of the lowest levels of vaccinations. Like, we don't care. We've been running around loose this whole time, but it's so important. But the point is, with something like COVID, you could find yourself in that situation. And I guess a question to ask yourself is, am I prepared for that? Do I have somebody I could trust? Do I have my documents? Do they know what I want? I mean, isn't that really what you're trying to help legally and correctly answer?
Correct. You're trying to give somebody the authority to make those decisions, and at least you're letting somebody know what your end-of-life decisions are.
Yeah, because, right, if they come in and the doctor, you can't talk and you're there and the doctor says, well, I think we need to do this procedure or that procedure, and then you have to know that you've got the right person making those calls for you.
That brings up another great point. That is a thing that people should know. When somebody's in the hospital, generally they are very sick, whatever reason they're there. So they do not make the greatest historians. So when the doctor comes in, or the nurse or whatever, who's going to tell them what the diagnosis or treatment or prognosis or whatever it is, lots of those people don't recall what was said in any detail.
Wow.
So it is always very good to have someone else there with the patient to be a sort of historian.
Right.
So you have another set of ears listening what was said.
Yeah.
So that's a tip, is always have somebody else in the room with you if you can. Of course, that's much more difficult these days.
Yeah, with COVID visitor restrictions.
Correct, but it's a useful tip.
So we were talking about this. So we've talked a little bit about power of attorney. We talked about this healthcare surrogate, which in my street person vernacular, it sounds to me like I want this person to basically help me make my decisions when I can't verbalize them or explain, or I'm not in a position to. And then the thing that you're talking about, the living will, has to do with now I'm kind of like down and out and have to say, well, here's kind of how I want you guys to treat that situation.
Yeah, whether or not you want life support continued, if it's just prolonging the dying process.
I wonder if a lot of the reasons that we're hesitant about tackling these things is because maybe we don't even know the right answers to questions like that.
Yeah, on my particular form, you can check the box off that you don't want life support continued in these certain circumstances, but I also put a couple other options. One option is I'm just going to leave that in the hands of my healthcare surrogate. Some people like having the boots on the ground and having that flexibility. And then I have another option, which is I want all means necessary used to keep me alive. I want to fight to the end.
Yeah, it's interesting when you think about all that. As people come in your office, I can think of a number of questions that they might want to ask you. It's like, first of all, who do I trust? Where do I go? And you were telling me about a funny sign that you actually had in your. You said it's in like one of your conference rooms. What was it about?
It says money isn't everything, but it keeps the kids close or in touch.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess as a elder law attorney who's been through all of that, you've seen people who've set everything up correctly and avoided all the headaches, and then you've also found yourself trying to sort out some, I'm sure, really dicey situations.
Well, you just take this as a snapshot. Imagine you have a parent, their spouse is deceased, and all of a sudden they get stricken with Alzheimer's and they haven't done any documents. And son shows up and he wants to be the guardian, and then daughter shows up, she wants to be the guardian. And these two have fought like cats and dogs for 40 years and don't get along, don't like each other, and all of a sudden now they're going to fight over who gets to make the decisions for mom or dad. And it can, blow up in the form of a lot of litigation.
Yeah, I guess if you love and care for your kids, really part of the reason you do this is because you don't want to put them in. You don't want to put them in like a little fight ring or something, right?
Right.
Wow. So we talked about the power of attorney. We talked a little bit about the health care surrogate. We've talked about the living will. There were a couple of other things that you mentioned are also important.
Well, one of them is the pre-need guardian declaration.
Okay, what does that mean exactly to the layperson?
Well, guardianship is the process where we have somebody legally declared incapacitated. And we go to court and file a petition. The court appoints an attorney to represent that person. And in Florida, we have a 3-member examining committee, which is more than most states. Just so you know, we have some of the tightest guardianship laws. And those examining committee people go out and examine the individual and report back to the court whether they think they're partially, totally, or not at all incapacitated. If they're partially or totally incapacitated, then we move to the second step, which is the appointment of a guardian. If there is more than one person trying to be the guardian, then we have a contested guardianship and we have a trial to see who is the proper person. With a pre-need guardian declaration, you designate who you want to be your guardian in the event a guardianship gets filed. And that creates a presumption in favor of that person.
Right.
And absent there being some mitigating problems, that person will get appointed. Now, mitigating problems could be, hey, they stole from you.
Oops. Oops.
They're not taking care of you. You're being abused or neglected.
Right.
They have a conflict of interest. They owe you money. So
Right.
as a guardian, the likelihood they're going to pursue that debt against themselves is probably low. So there are a variety of, or a felony conviction. Believe it or not, that pops up. In Florida, you have to be over 18, have to be able to carry out your duties, and you cannot have a felony conviction.
Wow.
And that's automatic disqualification. So if they had a felony conviction, they're out as well.
So let me ask the question, because we spent a good part of the first part of the show talking about, well, if we get our power of attorney and stuff pulled together and our health surrogate papers pulled together correctly, when does this pre-need guardian come into that whole mix of things? Just an example so we can kind of follow it.
Well, what happens if you execute a pre-need guardian declaration, you file it with the clerk of the court.
Okay.
And then at any time a guardianship gets filed, that document automatically makes it into that file.
So it supersedes, like somebody else comes down the road and says, well, I know Fred is managing the money, but I should be the guardian. Right. I see what you're saying.
The issue I've seen with it is usually you're naming the same person in that document that you've named as power of attorney and healthcare surrogate. And generally, we're not having a contested guardianship because that person's been an angel. Generally, we're having a contested guardianship because there's allegations that, like I said, you've been abused, neglected, or exploited. Wow. So even though it creates a presumption in favor of the person, usually we're still going to proceed with the guardianship because somebody wants to present some evidence that there was some bad act on behalf of that person.
Wow. So those are a lot of documents for us to consider. And again, the little bit that I have learned along the way about this is, boy, it makes a whole lot of sense. It's the ounce of prevention versus a pound of cure.
What I would like to point out is that both the power of attorney and the healthcare surrogate really should have a HIPAA release in them.
Okay. What is it now? Explain what that means.
Yeah, under the Health Insurance Portability Act and Accountability Act, your healthcare information is private.
Right.
And you can only be released to somebody other than for treatment purposes. For treatment purposes, healthcare providers can swap it back and forth. But it can only be released to somebody else if you authorize it.
Okay.
And so if you have somebody designated as a healthcare surrogate, of course, they're going to want to be able to get into your medical file before they make your healthcare decisions. So they need to be your designated person under HIPAA for that purpose. The power of attorney for finances also needs that because they will want to review your medical bills.
Sure.
And those can be protected by HIPAA because most of them talk about what happened.
Right. Why you had to have
which
that.
is healthcare information.
Right.
Why, and so we need the power of attorney for finances to be able to also look at the healthcare records.
Yeah.
So it needs to have, both of those need to have that agent designated as a representative under the HIPAA law.
Wow, so important. Well, I guess the lesson that we always walk away, Bill Johnson, when we have these talks is you got to get ahead of this curve. COVID is a great reason to help us understand why it's so important. Like you said, if you're waiting for the crisis to get something done, this would be a good one to look at. So
there's also some interesting new takes on some of this stuff. There's a thing out there called digital assets.
Oh yeah,
that you need to make sure the power of attorney covers.
Yeah,
because nowadays we all have digital assets. It would be, as simple as online banking, your Facebook page, your website, your cryptocurrency.
Right.
All kinds of things now are just only in the digital world. And so the power of attorney also needs to be able to get into those if needed.
Wow.
And you can restrict that as how you see fit. I'm not necessarily in favor of giving somebody blanket access, because that would give them access to every email you've ever written. You may not want that.
Yeah, but that it's another argument. Like, okay, you had this stuff done 10 years ago. Well, not much of this electronic stuff. Nobody thought of cryptocurrency 10 years ago.
Correct.
So it's another reason why you've got to sit down with an expert elder law attorney who knows the nuances of all this, and make sure, if you have your paperwork, make sure it's done right and you don't get hung up. Like we talked about that fire drill. You haven't had a fire drill. The ship is sinking, and you better have the right life preserver on, is really what it comes down to.
I've just read a very interesting article. We all assume that everything that goes out on the internet is there forever, and that is really actually not the case. And they talked about a certain incidents of, if you remember back when they had MySpace pages.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure.
There was a lot of what you would call proprietary information on MySpace. People had written songs, done movies. They had posted all kinds. And when MySpace folded, all that was lost overnight.
Wow.
So you can imagine that, you may not have all the photos you've taken on your phone, and they may be on your Facebook page, but what happens if Facebook disappears?
Wow.
Do you lose all those photos? And so, that's a digital asset that somebody would have to have authority to get into your Facebook page and be able to download your Facebook page with all those, almost the story of your life, kind of thing.
Wow.
So, there are some very interesting things.
So I guess the moral of the story is give Bill Johnson, elder law attorney, a call. Maybe check out one of the seminars you're doing or something like that. But you need to make sure that you're on top of this game. How do people get in touch with your office again?
They can reach us at 321-253-1667.
Yeah, so important. And FloridaElderLaw.net.
Correct.
Good. So in the couple of minutes, we're going to shift gears and we're going to talk about helping seniors car raffle. This is how we keep it's one of the most important ways that we're able to keep the doors open. We've been serving Brevard County for 10 years with the Helping Seniors County Information Helpline, free call for seniors and those who care for them. Our team has helped 3,500 plus families absolutely free of charge with everything: medical, legal, financial, transportation. The list just goes on. Home repairs, roofing. It's just unbelievable, the calls that Kim will handle on any given day. And so part of the way we do this is our president and founder, Joe Steckler, goes way back with AJ Hires, who's one of the top car dealers in the area. and they started this idea of doing car raffles as a fundraiser because it's a lot of fun. We get the fun of talking about a 2021 Chevrolet Camaro, 2021 Kia Sportage, 2021 Dodge Challenger, or the nifty little sporty 2021 Mazda Miata convertible. That's one car representing each of AJ's dealerships. And so actually somebody's going to win one of those cars, Bill Johnson, on the 9th of October when we have the grand drawing out at the American Muscle Car Museum.
I still haven't won.
Well, this could be your year.
It might be.
So you have to be in it to win it. You get your you have tickets at your office. If somebody comes by, they can get Helping Seniors raffle tickets right there at your office.
Yep.
And one ticket is $25. $5 is a $100 donation. And what each ticket does, it gives you an admit one into the Muscle Car Museum for the night of the drawing. But also, you get a bonus this year, right? Because we didn't get to go into the museum last year because of COVID. So Mark Pylock, the owner of the Muscle Car Museum, said, no, I want to honor that for the seniors here in Brevard County. I'm going to let you guys, I'm going to open up the museum a special Sunday afternoon at the museum on Sunday, September 12th from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. So you can bring out your 2020 help. We'll honor any of the Helping Seniors car raffle tickets, past, present, and I guess soon to be future, but you bring it out, you come in and spend the afternoon in the museum, and that's free. And so, but you got to get your tickets, helpingseniors.carraffle.com, or call Kim, 321-473-770.
And it's important to note the only time you can get in there is for a charity
That's
event.
Right. I explained to somebody, it's like his garage. He just opens up his garage. It just happens to have $80 million worth of cars in there, but that's it.
And if you've never been, it is amazing. So buy a ticket so you can go see that collection.
And in the closing minute here, I just want to remind you too that this Saturday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. we're putting a spotlight on that Mazda Miata. We're going to be out at Boniface Hires Mazda at the corner of US 1 and NASA Boulevard from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. with free barbecue. They're going to have like all these Mazdas in a row, so you can you like that car, don't you, Bill?
I do.
I hope we'll see you out there because we're going to be Facebook Live. We're going to have all kinds of stuff going on out there on Saturday. Free food is while supplies last, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Boniface Hires. Mazda, right there, corner of US 1 and NASA. And so we will look forward to seeing you Saturday there. We'll also look forward to seeing you right back here Wednesday lunchtime, 12 noon on 90.3 FM WEJF for the Helping Seniors radio show. Hope you have a great week until next week.